Hi, this is Karen Sassine with Mosaic Mentoring, and I'm here to show you how to use my Rainbow Colorants. This is what you get in a box: a vinyl sticker from Mosaic Mentoring. You get a color sample and recipe guide. This is your chart, and on the back is your guide on how to use the colorants. And this is the box of 24 beautiful colors. All right, let's get started. When getting started, it's important to gather all your supplies first. So here are the supplies that I recommend. We're going to use Laticrete Platinum 254 today. This is my thin set. I have a gram scale for measuring. I use silicone containers for doing small sample sizes. You could also use a disposable container. I like using metal measuring spoons. I also like to use an Italian spatula. The thing that I like about this, and I'll show you in a few minutes, is it mixes these perfectly. I always have a dropper full of water and then a larger container of water, depending on how much you're mixing up at first. I've got my colorants. It's important, I like to use the plastic baggie method. I'm going to show you how to do that. You want a paper towel. Here's my color sample and recipe guide. And then I also have a ultra fine point Sharpie, so I can write down my recipe on how to make a certain color. I've already figured out my measurements, so I'm going to mix up 5 grams of thin set today, and I already know that 3%, which is the BK555, has a maximum load of 3%, and I know how much to use, and then the cobalt blue has a maximum weight of 10%. We're going to explain that in a few minutes. So when mixing colorants, it's important to first decide how saturated you want the color to be. There's a maximum load to each colorant listed on the bottle. And this is where the maximum load is shown right here. The maximum load is the highest percentage of pigment that you can add to a powdered cement product, either a grout, thin set, or a concrete, to obtain the most saturated color. You never want to go over that maximum load, or your product will not harden properly. If you add less colorant, you'll get a lighter value. You must mix your dry cement-based products and colorants together first before adding any liquid. So let's go ahead and get started. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to tare, which is called balance. It's called tearing. It's balancing out the scale to make sure that it's on 0 when the container's on it. And I'm going to add 5 grams of powder. Now I usually work really small. When you're working a little bit larger, it's not necessary to be absolutely exact like this, but when you're working small, it's really important to be pretty close to accurate. So I'm going to be really accurate this time. There we go, close enough. All right, so for the BK555 at a 3% maximum load, I need a total of 0.15. In fact, I'm going to take a little bit more out of this. And you can see the difference. I mean, I'm working in a millimeter or milligrams, so it's a really small amount. So now I'm going to go up to 5.15. So we're going to show you how much it's going to take to get up to that 5.15. Doesn't take a whole lot at 3%. Almost there. There we go. Now it's really important to mix this very, very well before you add any liquid. Move this over here. So what I'm doing is if I were to use a plastic baggie method, I would add a little bit of air to the plastic baggie and I would shake it really, really, really well. When I'm making small quantities, I want to scoop along the side to make sure that any large pieces get very well mixed up. Now when I go along the edge, I can see if there's any streaks. That means that it's not completely mixed. All right, that looks pretty good. Now what I'm going to do, and this is important for any time you're doing a color sample, is you want to take a little bit out, add it to a smaller container, and I'm going to add a couple of drops of water. I'm going to move this out of the way and this over here. I'm going to show you as I'm mixing it, kind of creates a little ball until I get just enough in there. And then I mix it really, really, really well. And you can see the colors starting to really come out. And that is the color that I wanted. So that's done. Now at that point, now that I know that that's the color that I want, I can mix up a larger quantity based on the calculations that I've chosen. And then you're ready to use your thin set or your grout or whatever it is that you're going to do. So I'm going to show you about cleaning up. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this and I'm going to scoop out most of it. And now I'm going to take my paper towel and I'm going to wet it. Clean off. You never, ever, ever want to use any cement products down the drain. So you always use a wet paper towel. And this is why I use the silicone cups, is because, as you can see, they clean up really, really easily. So that is how I mix a 3% load for the BK555. So the next one we're going to do, just so I can show you again, is we're going to do the cobalt blue, and that's it at 10%. So once again, turn this on. I'm going to add my small quantity. So if I wanted to make a large quantity, let's say I was doing a large product, a large mosaic, and I needed a large quantity of grout or thin set, what I would use is a much larger scale and do the same calculations. So let's go ahead. Almost. There we go. Whoops. Okay. A bit less. And as you can see, it's such a minute difference. I'm being very, very exact here, but it doesn't have to be absolutely exact to that point. So now I need to add 0.5. So let's go ahead, show you what that would look like. Most. There we go. Okay. Now I mix it up, move that over. Now it doesn't matter what size I mix up, As long as my proportions are the same, you're going to get the same color. And that's why I always recommend making a sample first and mixing up small quantities to determine what color you want. Then I can take this calculation and scale it to whatever size I want. So mix it up really well. Colorants do come off with water. I do recommend that you avoid getting this on your hands or your clothes. And when mixing powdered substances, you should always wear an N95 mask. That's a particulate mask. All right, so now that I'm mixed up, once again, I make a small quantity. So if I was mixing a larger quantity, I might take this out. Instead of taking it out of this larger silicone cup, I would take it out of my plastic baggie and make sure that I make a small test so I know exactly how much, how the color looks. So I'm adding a little bit of water, mixing it, drop at a time. And that is what cobalt blue looks like. So let's say I did not like this color and I wanted to make it a little bit lighter, a little bit darker. The reason why I always mix up a small amount first is because now, let's say I wanted this lighter, I could actually take this, cut it in half, add some more thin set, and redo a sample. And that shows me exactly what the color saturation is. So you can modify this, but you never want to modify this. Once it's mixed up with your liquid, you never want to add more powder to it. So I always, always, always recommend making a small sample first. Now, color sample recipe. Let me show you how this works. So what I do, and the reason why I made these cards, you can do this on a card, you can do this on a piece of paper, but it's important to understand what the color is going to look like when it's dry. It's different when it's dry than when it's wet. So you want to get your sample out, and then I'm going to label on here exactly how this is done. So I'm doing a cobalt blue at a maximum saturation. So I'm going to do a maximum 10%, and there's my color sample and recipe. Now let's say I was mixing colors together and I wanted to make a special green, and I'm mixing cobalt blue and a yellow together. I'd write down cobalt blue and then the color green, or however many colors, and then you always want to put the percentage that you add of that color to get your final color. All right, so that is how I mix up my colorants. So you guys go out and play and create and have fun and imagine the possibilities.